The Seahawks have a few glaring holes on their roster heading towards the 2025 NFL Draft, but John Schneider's been known to throw a few curveballs, including in the first round. Could he do it again later this month in Green Bay? We'll be breaking it all down here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Whether you're tuning in from Lake Bay, Washington, or Columbus, Ohio, we appreciate each and every one of you. We are now officially 3 weeks away from the 2025 NFL Draft. Teams are wrapping up preparation with their final official 30 visits. And after that, it's going to be headfirst into the draft in Green Bay. With that in mind, we're bringing back fan-submitted mock drafts. I'm going to be diving into several of those that were submitted today on social media, a bunch of very different viewpoints, and I'm looking forward to handing out some grades for those today. This episode is brought your way by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. In terms of predictability, John Schneider, he has been one of the more erratic general managers in the first round over the years, making plenty of selections that caught people off guard, whether it was LJ Collier in 2019, the year before Rashad Penny, the running back out of San Diego State, being picked in the first round, trading back for Jermaine Ifedi several years before then. The Seahawks have had their share of curveballs that John Schneider has thrown in the opening round. And keeping that in mind, the Seahawks set to pick at number 18 overall. There's some buzz out there about a few prospects that maybe are not at positions that are viewed as the greatest needs for the Seahawks, but John Schneider's talked about this a bunch this offseason. They've really gotten away from reaching for needs, which is an area that they really have struggled with in the past. But John Schneider seems to have learned from some of the mistakes that he made on that front. And so he's looking for the best player available. And when you have a top 20 pick and you have an opportunity to land a potential blue chip player that maybe falls into your lap, maybe you don't need a corner right this second. But if that's the best player available and it's a good scheme fit, you have to keep all options on the table. And when you look at some of the guys Seattle has brought in for official 30 visits so far, it's clear as well that they are looking into some of those options that might not be a guard or a defensive end that rushes the passer, a position that's viewed as a major area of need, a receiver to help replace DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. It might not be one of those perceived major needs that the Seahawks end up picking. So each and every year, I like to take a dive down this rabbit hole looking at 5 or 6 players that maybe are not on the radar for fans, and maybe they're not at the positions that are viewed as the greatest needs for the Seahawks, but as far as best player available, could absolutely be surprises that the Seattle Seahawks could take at 18 or in a trade down. Without further ado, let's get to it here. My first pick here, as far as unexpected Seahawks targets at pick number 18, a player that, as I reported today, is going to be visiting the Seahawks on April 14th and 15th. Shavon Ravel Jr., the corner out of East Carolina. And as I just kind of hinted at a few moments ago, if you're just looking in a 2025 lens, Seattle still has Reek Woolen. They have Devin Witherspoon. They just re-signed Josh Joe. It is a very rock-solid cornerback group, and it's possible that Reek Woolen could get a new contract and they could extend him. They could do it with Witherspoon too. They could invest a ton of money in their secondary in the next couple of years. But I feel like Reek Woolen is very much a 50-50 proposition right now because he's, quite frankly, been benched for brief moments each of the last 2 years. And the play has been good for the most part, but he's been inconsistent. There's been some questions about tackling, assignment miscues. He has to take a big step forward for the Seahawks to be willing to commit the kind of money that he's likely going to be trying to get on the open market next year. Corner is an area of underrated need, in my opinion. And if you have a chance to get a guy like Shavon Ravel, now he is coming off a torn ACL, and that's always a major asterisk when we are looking at prospects in the first round of the draft. But if Revel was not injured last season, I think there's a chance he might have been a top 10, top 12 pick in this draft class, because when you look at what he's capable of doing, this kid is 6'3", nearly 200 pounds. He is that massive long-armed corner that the Seahawks have loved throughout the Pete Carroll era. And Mike Macdonald, he might not have the same prototype, but he will definitely take bigger-bodied corners that are really athletic and can hawk the football. And in the 3 games that Revel played before tearing his ACL on the practice field this last year, he had 2 interceptions in those 3 games, including a pick 6. He has a 5% missed tackle rate in his college career. So he is a sound tackler. He'll come up and stick people. He's willing to play in the run game. He's an excellent press cover corner that loves to abuse receivers at the line of scrimmage and really set the tone snap to snap. He has the speed to be able to recover on deep balls if he gets beat. There's a lot to like about this kid. So it might not seem like the biggest need, but I think when you look from 2026, you have to draft beyond 1 year. I think that it would make some sense if he's healthy. That is the big caveat here. Do the medicals check out? And from my understanding, he is way ahead of schedule and is supposed to be ready to go this summer to be able to participate in training camp. We'll see how it goes, but Revel's a player a lot of teams are very excited about, and he could still very well go in the middle of the first round because of the talent that's there when he is healthy. Second on my list, staying in the secondary, I've talked ad nauseum about this kid, Nick Emanowori from South Carolina, 6'3", 220 pounds, lit up the combine, really productive college career, 3 seasons as a starter for the Gamecocks. He was a starter, a true freshman at Columbia, and he had 80-plus tackles in 2 of those seasons. Last year, he had 4 picks, and 2 of them he returned to the house for interceptions, returned for touchdowns. So this kid can do a little bit of everything. He hasn't missed a lot of tackles either. Very sound tackler. You add in that record-setting combine performance where he basically jumped out of Lucas Oil Stadium, ran in the 4.3s at his size. This kid is a coveted prospect. He's got a few warts in his game. He's given up a few big plays in coverage the last couple of years, being over-aggressive, but there's so much to like about this kid. I'll be surprised if he's there for the Seahawks at number 18 at this stage. But if he is not the same player as Kyle Hamilton, but there's some similarities. He can do some things that maybe Kyle Hamilton is not quite as good at. I think he'd be a really fun fit in Mike Macdonald's defense. The fact they met with him formally at the Combine and official 30 visit, the Seahawks are clearly very interested in him. At number 3 on my surprise targets at 18 list, Jalen Walker, the linebacker, or I guess you could call him an edge from Georgia. He's under 245 pounds. So I don't know if he's one of those guys that can play every single snap as an edge, especially in Mike Macdonald's defense. However, you are seeing teams, they are valuing these hybrid players that can play off-ball linebacker as well as rush off the edge, and Walker can do both of them. This is a guy that's had a couple 6-sack seasons at Georgia. He's a guy that can get after the quarterback. He's been an effective blitzer. He is very instinctive against the run. He knows how to get around and slip through blocks. Very good at deciphering his plays in the run game. He's got the athleticism to cover. Not a perfect prospect, but he is a very enticing player that I think has a high ceiling. And if Seattle wants to bring in a guy that they can rotate in some as an off-ball linebacker with Tyrese Knight, and they can use him off the edge from time to time, maybe that's what he grows into as a full-time player because he's got the frame to add some weight. I think Walker is a guy that's probably a long shot for the Seahawks, but if he's there at 18, this guy can do so many things well, and he's a younger prospect. I think the Seahawks would be very excited. It would be difficult for them to pass up on him if he's there at that pick. 2 other players I'm going to mention real quick. Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State. I don't see him being one of these tackles that slides inside. Before his patellar tendon injury that he suffered last season, this guy was a slam dunk top 10 pick in this draft class. He's probably going to go in the 20s because of the injury. Charles Cross, he's probably going to have his 5th-year option picked up, but that remains to be seen. Abraham Lucas had injury issues. He's going to the last year of his contract. I could see the Seahawks deciding to draft a tackle if they feel like it's the best player that is available there at 18 or after a trade down, even coming off the injury. Simmons was one of the very best pass protectors in college football. He has the athleticism to be able to handle Clint Kubiak's zone blocking scheme. And on the edge, this is one of the players that I just look at and he screams Seahawks. And I feel like Mike McDonald, with the success he's had with different players over the years, like a Matt Judon, Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College finished second in the country in sacks last year. I call him Gumby because he has as much bend going around the corner as any rusher I've seen in the last 10 years. The dude is incredibly elastic. He's got great ankle flexion, getting around the corner, allows him to zero in quarterbacks quickly. Explosive first step, very productive. Some might have questions about his run defense. I do not. And I think the Seahawks would find ways with him being a 2-point stance outside linebacker. It would be a perfect fit for him. I think Ezeraku was going in round 1. A lot of people are projecting round 2. A guy with that type of productivity, and the fact of the matter is Bill Bryant's raved about this kid, former NFL head coach, with his leadership intangibles. I could see him being a guy that the Seahawks fall in love with at 18 or on a trade down. An edge might not seem like a huge need, but boy, Maffe's a free agent next year. Who knows what's going to happen with the Uchenna Nwosu? Derek Hall will be in the last year of his contract next year. That is a position the Seahawks could very well be aggressive using one of their first couple picks, even the first rounder, to try to shore up and add some talent to get after opposing quarterbacks. Ezeraku would most certainly do that. When I come back, we do this once or twice every year, and I'm fired up for the opportunity to grade several fan-submitted 7-round mock drafts. We're going to get to those coming up next year on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. They make it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. I just checked the Game Time app again, and there are amazing deals on the Final Four in the college basketball tournament. The lowest price guarantee from Game Time means if you find a better deal elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. They also offer seat views before you buy and no surprise fees, so you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12 that's tuning in right now. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are officially 3 weeks away from the 2025 NFL Draft. It's going to be here before you know it. And keeping that in mind, as we do once or twice a year in the pre-draft season, like to see what the fans think the Seahawks are going to do with fan-submitted mock draft 7-round editions. And I'm going to be diving into several of these, and a special thanks to all of you. Obviously, I can't go through all 83 that were submitted today on social media. We do not have time to do that, but I picked 6 vastly different ones that often offered up different spin from a fan perspective, what the Seahawks could do. Let's kick things off here. Our first one that I'm going to be grading here coming from Ailing Tracy on X. And our ground rules going into this, you could do no more than 2 trades. And in this particular instance, there was a trade down from 18 to 22 in the first round to recoup another 3rd-round pick. So the Seahawks have 3 picks from 82 to 92 here. And look, I think Gray Zabel would be worth it at pick number 18 with the athleticism, the versatility, the upside that he brings to the table. If you can get him at pick number 22, that's really good value, and you instantly upgrade your offensive line with a guy that I believe can come in and can start really early at one of the guard spots for the Seahawks. And then in the 2nd round, Xavier Watts, the ball-hawking safety from Notre Dame. I have some concerns about his tackling, but that is an issue that can be fixed. He had 13 interceptions the last 2 years, so he really knows how to get his hands on the football. And again, I think the Seahawks could very well take a safety early to pair with Kobe Bryant and Julian Love. Tate Ratledge, one of my favorite guards, nasty and athletic at 52, to me would be an excellent value. And I love the 3rd-round selections here. Kyle Williams, local fans of the Pacific Northwest know all about his explosive playmaking ability. I was stunned when I was seeing him as a 5th, 6th, 7th round projection. It's like, did you watch the Cougars at all this past season? Kyle Williams is one of the best big play threats in this receiving class. I think he's going on day 2. This might be the sweet spot in the 3rd round. So I love the fact that in this mock draft, the Seahawks are bringing him across the state. He gets to join their receiving core, and it gives them some punch downfield that they're now lacking without DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And the 2 other players in the 3rd round here, Ty Robinson, I'm a huge fan of. Every time I watch Nebraska this past season, I watch a lot of Big Ten football. He just stood out every single game. His motor, his physicality, he's a better athlete than people advertised. And then if you're looking for a high upside player that is kind of going under the radar, Jordan Birch, the edge from Oregon, maybe a day 3 guy, but I could very well see a team like the Seahawks at 92 taking a shot on him, because I do think there is a chance with proper development that kid can be a long-term starter off the edge. There's a lot to like about his game. And going over to day 3, CJ West, I'm telling you, I think he's a day 2 guy, but maybe he ends up falling into the 4th round. If Seattle can get him, a guy that is undersized, but he's physical, he plays with leverage, he's very difficult to move off the line of scrimmage. If you can get him at 137, that's great value. The same for Kyle McCord. If he falls into the 170s, the Seahawks have absolutely got to get him. I don't think he's getting past pick 100 to 105 range. I'll be surprised if he falls beyond that. But quarterbacks, if we've watched the past few years, teams are getting guys in the 1st round and really wait until middle to late day 3 to go pick the rest of the quarterbacks. That's kind of been the trend. So maybe that happens with Kyle McCord, but those would be really good values. And as far as the rest of the draft, Jalen Conyers is one of my favorite mid-round tight ends. He had a really good combine, can catch the football, can create after the catch, is a solid blocker. There's a lot to like. Not necessarily a guy that's great at any one thing, but he's good at everything. And I think if you can get him middle day 3, that's really good value. And the pick that I really like late in the draft, just from a flyer perspective, Donovan Edwards did not have the best career at Michigan the last couple of years, and were not as effective as early in his career. But I really like this kid's toughness, and I like the explosiveness that he brings to the table. It's a good guy to kind of redshirt and stash in your running back depth chart that could maybe contribute for you. And who knows, if you have some injuries, he might contribute for you as a rookie. I think this is an outstanding mock draft. I do have some questions about some of the players that were picked. I think that they're not going to be there at those points, but that's not in fans' control. You're using the mock generators, and that's what happens. So I'm giving this one an A-. I really like it. I think that this would be an excellent haul for John Schneider. And if they're going to trade down a few spots, a 3rd rounder is probably what they're going to be getting. So I think this is a realistic one for Seahawk fans. Next one here coming from Seahawks Flock 12 on X. I mentioned Nick Amanawari earlier, just how rare of an athlete he is at 6'3", 220 pounds at the safety position. He's got ball skills. He can hit people. He can blitz. Didn't do that a lot at South Carolina, but he was effective when they sent him. There's some room to grow in coverage, but he is very well worth it at pick number 18. And this might be the biggest surprise on any of the mock drafts. I'll say it's the second biggest. We'll just leave there. But Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, the former walk-on who had a monster final season with the Bruins, really athletic kid, incredible instincts, comes up and sticks people. Look, Ernest Jones was re-signed. Seattle's got Tyrese Knight going into year 2. But if they have the opportunity to upgrade from Tyrese Knight here for a player that some are speculating could be a 1st-round pick out of UCLA, if it's the best player available mantra, very well could happen there. And Marcus Bowell, the guard from Purdue, he's played tackle previously. I think he's a guard at the next level, especially in Seattle's system. I've got a late 2nd, early 3rd grade on him. So 52 seems like maybe just a hair above that, but it's a reasonable spot to pick him. As for the picks on the 3rd round, all about the passing game. Jalen Royals at 82. Jalen Royals is one of my favorite receivers in this class. He had 7 catches 2 years ago, 7 catches of 50-plus yards. He is a dynamite play waiting to happen. He had an injury that shortened his season last year, but he can create after the catch. He can win downfield. You get him at pick 82. That is really good value. And then Quinn Ewers at 92. That's about the sweet spot for me with him. I wouldn't pick him in the 2nd round. He could be a developmental QB that can start in a year or two for you, though. If you're looking for a hedge for Sam Darnold, your new starting quarterback, and Ewers has some traits that John Schneider has always loved: the quick release, the high IQ, the ability to get the ball downfield. That's the kind of player that he's always gravitated to. I think Ewers has some of those traits. I just don't know that he's going to necessarily be pro ready. He's going to need some time, which the Seahawks would be a good landing spot for him. When you look at the day 3 selections here, Kansas, they've kicked out some good offensive linemen as of late. Logan Brown would maybe be the next one here. I actually think that Kansas might have a lineman that's a better scheme fit than Logan Brown for Clint Kubiak's system, but still an experienced tackle that's played in the Big 12 would make some sense. Marcus Tate is another one that you got to wonder about the fit necessarily. Hasn't been a great zone blocker in college, more of a downhill drive blocker, but he's a solid pass protector, could make some sense. The pick that I really like in this day 3, Jacob Gideon at pick number 223. He is so under the radar. I couldn't find any pictures to post him. We were talking about guards and centers earlier in our draft review, but this kid was one of the highest graded zone blockers in college football, according to Pro Football Focus. And when you turn on the tape, you can see it. And these MAC kids, the MAC kicks out some good NFL players. Now, he's under 300 pounds. He's on the smaller side, but he's extremely agile, really athletic, has a high football IQ. He's not somebody you're taking until the 6th or 7th round, maybe even undrafted. He has not been at the combine, but this is a kid that has really good film, and he does a lot of things that would translate well to Clint Kubiak's scheme. So that would be, to me, the best day 3 value in this draft. I'm going to give this one a B just because I do wonder about picking a linebacker at number 50, even though I think that Schwessinger, I cannot say his name, is a really good player. I just don't know about the need there at all because you do have Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight under contract for the next 3 years. I think linebacker is more of a position you look at for depth on day 3. And I think on day 3 in this draft, I like the Gideon pick. Elijah Roberts, not sure about the scheme fit. Marcus Tate, I'm not sure about the scheme fit. And Logan Brown, I'm not sure about the scheme fit. So I think on day 3, there's some guys that might be round holes trying to fit in a square peg type ordeal. But I love the value with Manowari, Royals, Bow, and Ewers in the first 92 selections. And our last one here in this segment, coming from Hawks Fan 12th on X, it's your first one with a receiver going at pick number 18. Matthew Golden, this is a guy that I'm hearing a lot of buzz dating back to the combine, but as of the last couple of weeks, I'm hearing a lot of buzz about him potentially going the first 12 picks. I don't know if this kid with 4.29 speed is going to be there for the Seahawks at 18, but he gives you that explosive downfield ability as much as any receiver in this class with that track speed, a guy that can create some after the catch. And I feel like there's a lot of untapped upside yet in his game. So I think he would make some sense there at 18. Xavier Watts, as I talked about earlier, a ball hawk, has some tackling issues, but I think pick 50 is really good value for him. Ariante Ursery from Minnesota, this is about where I expect him to go in the middle of the second round. If Seattle's looking for a guy that can play some guard early and move back to tackle down the line, I think Ursery is one of those players in this draft that can do that, though I'm more comfortable with him at tackle than some of the other potential converts, and he's got a little longer arms. He's athletic, a really good value pick there. And then in the third round, Terrence Ferguson, locals, whether you're a Washington fan or an Oregon fan, you'll know who Terrence Ferguson is. Ferguson is a really athletic tight end that has some blocking ability. That's maybe a little higher than I would have him in this draft. I think he's a 4th round caliber player, but pick 82, that might be the highest end for him. And Jonah Savalanea from Arizona is a player that I really like I think he'll probably be off the board before then. A really athletic guy that ran a 4.95 40. He's a player that if you turn on Arizona tape, you can see the athleticism playing the tackle position. He might be able to play tackle in the league, but I think he's a guard in Clint Kubiak's system with his athleticism. He's got some length concerns as well for as big of a guy as he is, not the longest of arms. I think playing inside would be a really good fit for him in Seattle's offense. And looking at day 3, this is another draft where Kyle McCord falls to pick 172. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. This is a kid. There's a lot of positive buzz about him, and he had a strong finish to the season. There's still plenty of untapped potential there. I think he's gone earlier than that. JJ Pegues from Ole Miss has played some fullback, extremely athletic DT. That might be a good spot for him in the 130s because of how loaded this defensive tackle class is. And a couple other picks I like here. Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State. He's coming off of an injury for the Buckeyes, but he's a guy that has started a lot of games in the Big Ten. And Jamon Dumas Johnson, formerly of Georgia, transferred to Kentucky, is built like a brick. Short, stocky, will make plays, will come up and hit you. I have some coverage concerns with him. He's had a few missed tackles on tape, but I think late on day 3, there is potential developmental starter value there. So I'm going to give this one a B+. I like the day 3 selections. And I think when you look at the picks on day 1, you might have questions about picking a receiver at 18, but Matthew Golden would be the perfect fit to try to supplement this offense with what they're missing, losing DK Metcalf. I think Watt's a good day 2 value. Jonah on day 3 is a really good value. Pegues at 137, I think makes a lot of sense too. This overall is a pretty sound draft. When I come back, we've got 3 more mock drafts that were submitted by you, our valued listeners. Going to be grading those out. That's coming up next year on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Getting back to our fan-submitted mock drafts, this is one of my favorite things to do in the pre-draft process. Kind of get a pulse for how the 12s are feeling heading into the draft. We normally do it around 3 to 4 weeks before the draft. Once the combine's over, pro days wind down, we start getting official visits, information in. This is the good time for informed fans to really dish out their thoughts on what John Schneider is going to do. We've got 3 more fan submissions. Again, a special thanks to the 83 of you that submitted mock drafts today. Some of them were very similar. And again, I can't read all 83, but greatly appreciate each and every one of you for the submissions. We're going to start with the wildest one. And this is what I call the Aaron Rodgers free fall effect. Even though it's not for a quarterback, it's for a player that is expected to go much earlier, falling in the draft at a position that's been devalued. And look, I think Seahawk fans, human_005, I think that this mock draft would have some fans with pitchforks. I would not be in that corner because Ashton Jeanty is a phenomenal talent. A lot of times we see the word generational talent thrown around too much. Not with this kid. He is absolutely spectacular. I don't think he gets past Las Vegas at pick 6. So the idea that he's going to be there at 18 seems very far-fetched to me. But we've seen crazier things happen in the draft. If there's a major run on defensive linemen and offensive linemen, the running back might fall into Seattle's laps. And then John Schneider is going to have a very tough time with that. And maybe then he can dangle Ken Walker III as trade bait to get a day 3 selection. But I think the chances of that happening are very slim. That being said, I think that this draft offers a lot of value on day 2 that seems very realistic. And for Seahawks fans that are wanting to overhaul the interior offensive line, this mock draft does that. In the second round, Wyatt Milam, the zone blocking extraordinaire, has played tackle at West Virginia, but I think he's a guard with the smaller arms. He's a really sound zone blocker, has good movement skills at pick 50, and then Ratledge from Georgia at 52. You got your 2 potential starters on day 1 there in the second round at your guard spots. And Milam maybe could still play tackle in the league if you want to go in that direction. And then Tez Johnson, I know he didn't test the way that people thought he was going to. Running in the 4.5s at his size, that was not expected. But you turn on the tape, this kid is absolutely dynamite with the football in his hands, can win downfield. I still think he's a 2nd or 3rd round caliber player, but he might not be picked until day 3. In this instance, though, you get him at 82. Will Howard, this is probably the sweet spot in the 90 to 110 range. I still have some reservations about him as a passer. He stepped his game up for the national champions with an incredible receiving core around him. I still have some questions whether he can be a starter in the league, but this is where you would take that chance. And as far as day 3 picks, there's a couple players here that I'm really excited about. Joshua Farmer at pick 139. He might be one of the most unpredictable prospects in terms of where he's going to land, Both Rob Rang, my co-host, and I view him as a third-round caliber player. You turn on Florida State last year, it was not fun to watch the Seminoles. They lost a bunch of games. That was one of the worst regressions I've ever seen from a college football program. They almost got to the playoff the year before, but you don't want to blame Farmer. He was one of the few guys that played with maximum effort the entire season. Really good run defender, has some flashes as a pass rusher. I've seen plenty of people that have been mocking him in the 5th and 6th round, though, and he's one of those guys, it's very up in the air depending on what type of defensive tackle you want. He could slip, but I could also see him very well going in the 3rd round. So I don't think this is an unrealistic selection. And Sebastian Castro, maybe not the greatest athlete at the safety position, but incredibly productive for the Hawkeyes. They kick out NFL-ready players. That's a good third safety developmental player that could eventually be one of your top 2 if you need him to play in that position, can play special teams as well. I'm going to give this one a solid B. The Genty thing, I'm not going to blame the drafter because if he did free fall there, it does create a potential predicament because of just how talented this kid is. But I like the double dipping at guard on day 2 at 50 and 52. I like the picks of Johnson and Howard. I think Farmer and Castro are really good values on day 3. Our next one here coming from Hawks fan 12th on X. This one is a departure from every other mock draft on here in terms of the strategy, going with an edge and not one that I necessarily have had on the radar for the Seahawks. James Pierce Jr., incredibly productive, didn't test as well as people thought he was going to, and there are some serious character concerns that have been raised about this kid. Now, maybe the Seahawks don't have those concerns. Maybe they feel they can maximize his talent in their culture. But this is a kid that I actually think there's a really good chance falls out of the 1st round, despite the fact I think he has 1st-round talent. But the Seahawks have taken chances on guys like this. So Pierce at 19, that is truly a roll of the dice. That is a boom or bust selection, in my opinion. If it booms, he could be an all-pro caliber player. For busts, you might have an issue where a couple years from now you're trying to figure out how you can move on from this player. Elik Ayumaner from Stanford at pick number 50 is a really solid player. If you watched him against Colorado a couple years ago, basically took a 30-point deficit by himself and erased it. He's got that kind of playmaking ability. I don't know about his separation skills in the league, how it'll translate, but he's got really good hands, can win jump balls, can win contested catches, a smart, high IQ player. This is about where I expect he's going to go in the mid to late 2nd round. Demetrius Knight, the linebacker from South Carolina, we've talked him up on this show. He's taken an interesting path, 3 different schools, started at smaller programs before eventually landing at South Carolina, had a fantastic lone season there. I'm thinking 3rd round for him, but 52, there could be some teams that have interest in him here. Tate Ratledge at pick 92, I don't see him falling anywhere close to that far. I think he is squarely a day 2 pick and might even get into the discussion for end of 1st round with his talent. As far as day 3 players here, I think this one is a gold mine. I love all 4 players from 137 to 223. Chase Lunt from Connecticut played 3 years next to Christian Haynes, who the Seahawks obviously drafted in the 3rd round last year, and he's incredibly agile for a 6'7", 300-plus pound lineman. One of the top 4 zone blocking tackles in college football last year. The tape matches. He's incredibly consistent getting to the 2nd level, getting his hands on guys, and he just seems to know how to target at the 2nd level, and you can get him out on the run on pulling assignments. He's a very good zone blocker. I think he's a really good fit for the Seahawks there at pick 137. Denzel Burke, I'll be surprised if he falls to 172, but there's a chance he could go down to there. There's not a ton of ball production consistently, but I think he can develop that at the next level, a little bigger bodied corner. And Jay Higgins at 223. We talked about him a few episodes ago at the linebacker position. This guy had over 170 tackles last year for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, he didn't test well, ran in the high 4.7s. Teams are going to look at that like, ooh, I don't know about that. But you watch the tape, he looks faster than that. He can play sideline to sideline. He had several interceptions last year, so he can cover. He's just a really good football player. He might go in mid-day 3 or late day 3 because the athletic testing concerns, but you're getting a really polished football player that I think can step in and start. He could push Tyrese Knight right away in Seattle. I think he's that caliber of a player. I really like that prospect. I'm going to give this one an A-, and mainly because I like the value on day 3. And I think that the picks in the first 2 days, James Pierce would be the most debatable one. Knight maybe a little higher than I would select him. Ratledge is lower than I think he's going to go. But again, this is a mock simulator. If the player's available, you take them. And there's these kind of changes that actually happen in the real draft. So I like this. I like this draft from that perspective. So I'm going to give an A-. And our last one here, real quick, coming from HawkSZN on X. This is going to be the one that creates maybe a little controversy. Now, it's trading out of the first round, which historically John Schneider has done a few times. The last time he did it, though, Malik McDowell was the end result. Now, I don't think Donovan Jackson, the guard out of Ohio State, I don't think you have to worry about character concerns like Malik McDowell. This guy was a captain at Ohio State. He's played tackle. He's played guard. Really smart player, outstanding athlete, great scheme fit. Jalen Milroe at pick 50. Jalen Milroe is an incredible athlete. Ran in the 4.3s. He can throw the ball a country mile. I just have questions about him being able to read defenses, his pocket presence. There's a lot of things he's going to have to improve at dramatically to be successful at the NFL level. And maybe Clint Kubiak and the staff are the right guys to get it out of it. But I've got a late 3rd, early 4th grade on him with what I've seen in the film. But teams might take him at pick 50 because of the upside. Landon Jackson at 52, this would be a great value. 6'7", long wingspan, very physical player that dominates opponents with bull rushes, has some counter moves that he's developed. He is a really solid player that can move up and down the line. And Alfred Collins at 70 would be really good value. A run stuffer, 330 plus pounds, that has flashed a little bit as a pass rusher. And the other thing I love about this draft, pick 88. This is the extra one added from one of the trade downs. Cam Stadabo, I am all in on him being the next John L. Williams for the Seahawks. Let's get him at the fullback position, hand it off to him a bunch, let him catch the football, let him blow people up as a blocker. It just seems like he would be a really fun fullback in Clint Kubiak's team. Who knows if the Seahawks will actually do that? But if they pick Stadabo, I would think that is very much in the potential plans for them to use him, at least in his first season, in that capacity with all the other running backs they have on their roster. So I really like that pick from a value perspective. And then looking at day 3, I would be remiss not to mention Savion Williams, a really good day 2 value, 3rd round value with his rushing ability, kick return, punt return ability. And he's a developing receiver that has had some big plays at TCU. On day 3, Ty Robinson, I talked him up earlier. If you get him at 175, that's as good of a value as you're going to get in this draft class. I think he's late 3rd, early 4th probably in this draft. And Savion Jones is a twitchy athletic edge that hasn't necessarily had the production consistently at LSU, but that's the kind of guy you take a flyer on at 137. So that is one of my favorite picks in this mock draft. I'm going to give this one an A- as well. Feels like there might be a little meat left off the bone on day 3, but I think when you look at the value acquired with the trade downs, if the Seahawks were going to trade out of the first round and this was the haul they got, this would have to be the haul to make that a good one. And I like the picks throughout the first 2 days of the draft. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow on our Blue Friday show, we've got plenty more draft coverage coming your way. And we're also going to be taking a look at that fullback position because John Schneider said they are in the hunt right now. Are there any free agents that could still be in the peripheral? And which draft prospects could make some sense? We'll be talking about that on tomorrow's show. Make sure you listen in. And thanks for tuning into this one. Go Hawks.